Thank you for joining us today, ladies and gents. We are 3 months away from the presidential election, and figured I'd just make that announcement very clear. Naturally, you're listening to Mars on Life. I'm Ryan Mancini. I'm going to be one of your hosts for today's episode, and joined with me, as always.
Sebastian Shug, way to shake it up. See, Ryan Mancini, I had no idea who that was. Like it's not a returning host, it's just a host. So.
Well, it's kind of like when you have a TV show and you're surprised that the host is back, even though it's like, well, it is the host
Oh,
or a
thank God.
host.
Yeah, thank God I can watch John Oliver time and time again to tell me what my opinions are. Yeah. Okay.
Or at least just be thankful it's John Oliver and not somebody else who shows up every once in a while. That would be messy.
Oh, is that a joke? Okay. Is that supposed to, that's a Murray joke, huh? You want another joke, Murray? Fucking guy. So, I want to just jump into this, and
Mhm.
I'm doing this for brevity's sake because I got a lot to talk about, and last episode, ironically, I didn't. I kind of left that up to you and Heather
Mhm.
regarding the Karens of the world. Which, by the way, you said you were going to come up with a title that was even better than mine. I thought my title was pretty good as a placeholder.
Mhm.
Um, as Randall Graves would always say, a bunch of savages in this town, and I didn't think it could get any more perfect than that. But you have surprised me. You really have.
I'm beginning to realize that asterisks are
Oh,
so essential.
oh yeah, they're very buzzwordy,
I
because you,
mean,
you pay attention to an asterisk
yeah.
more so than it's eye catching.
Like in a weird way, it's a form of censorship, and as much as I'm wholeheartedly against censorship of any kind, I am always in favor of shutting down things that are hateful. So, whether that's not referring to the president as, his last name, stuff like that, it's cathartic in a way, and it's kind of a good way to make you feel like, not everything's so bloody miserable that I have to keep referencing these horrible people that are making my life miserable, like the Karens of the world.
I Man, it was very cathartic, I will say.
Mm,
So I've been spending a lot of time not working, and by when I say that, I mean not working in front of the computer. At least when it comes to publishing, I've been kind of taking a break from that and pursuing other projects. But in the downtime, I've been playing some PS4.
mm,
Now, if you can't tell already, the tone of my voice, it's really not what any of the other episodes kind of would entail. As much as I would love to use comedic hyperbole for this,
mm,
I got to be honest, it's hot as hell where I am, and it's
mm,
sucking the life out of me. But also, it's kind of a more conversationalist topic, not
mm.
so much one of us getting mad about, as usual, or especially me. But I want to get your take on it because
Mm.
you don't play video games, or at least you don't play them at the extent that I do, if at all.
Right.
Needless to say, when I sit down after sort of a long, hard day at work and hell, a long, hard day of working in front of my computer, I'm sitting down with The Last of Us 2,
Mm,
a
mm,
game that has completely been raked through the mud by not only the internet, but also various representational groups, let's just say. Now, you know me not only as the co-host of Mars on Life, but also as a person in general,
mm.
that I tend to err on the side of contrarianism. More often than not, I'll have a joke affixed to that, but I like disliking things for the butt end of a joke and or satire.
Mhm.
I hate to say, but I'm kind of on the contrarian end of this, but in the opposite way. I actually like this game quite a bit.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, no, and I'll tell you why. Because when we were talking about this episode, it was kind of it was kind of me shooting in the dark about proposing this topic to you because one, you don't play video games, but two, you can very much relate to the pandemic oriented mediums that are circulating now. I remember
Yeah.
when we used to oh God, what episode was it when we talked about like Outbreak and
Oh yeah. Right. Well, like talking about like Plague Entertainment and
Plague
how
Entertainment. Yeah.
it's which surprisingly enough, studies have shown that they're their own kind of catharsis, but they're also their own kind of education for people, where they
Yeah.
can get kind of an idea on their situation. I mean, hell, Contagion is a lot like what we're going through now, you know.
Well, it's exactly what we're going through now. Yeah. I mean, minus the whole people ripping each other to bits, but where my
Well,
well, where my opinion kind of stems from this, though, I think bottom line as an outbreak media, specifically about zombies. God, it's really hard to put into words, but the fact that it's, I guess, downright enjoyable. And in contrast, you would look at something maybe as groundbreaking as The Walking Dead, maybe having this sort of an impact. I remember when it did in 2012, like 2013, around that area. But
yeah.
I would venture to hope that in some level of imagination, you would have some sort of originality when it comes to storylining these kind of fucking movies. And Last of Us definitely delivers. Okay, Last of Us Part 1 and Last of Us Part 2, up to the point I'm which playing at, has delivered. Okay, and if you want to sit there and compare the whole thing about Walking Dead, there we go. I almost forgot it. If you want to sit there and compare the story to Walking Dead, story, what fucking story? Oh, you mean the thing that AMC wants you to give a phenomenal shit about, with pacing as slow as every single other goddamn Japanese media on the planet, because they don't know what pacing is either, and it takes one episode to walk from a house to a building and then another to a town. Look, I respect the overall like ambiance and anxiety riddled feelings that these medias develop. I guess I could put the disclaimer right now that this is a spoiler warning for Last of Us 1 and 2. A very brief synopsis, very, very brief. And then I'm going to address the claims made against it, because, like I said, people are up in arms about this title, when really I think people are just looking at it the wrong way.
Right.
But go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I think, especially now, well, okay, I don't think COVID has much to do with it, somewhat, but I think that there is some degree of fatigue with the zombie genre, and I think it's fascinating how in certain mediums it's working in a way where something like The Walking Dead isn't for a lot of people. Because I was a huge fan. I came rather late into the game, but at the end of the day, it was something that I enjoyed for a short while,
right?
Like for a summer.
And I think a lot of people end up being fair weather fans when it comes to a zombie apocalypse type story that slowly morphs into something that really isn't a story, or that more or less does not have an end goal. Because the end goal, theoretically, in a zombie type situation, I'm speaking as if this were to happen in real life, as if we were to be bunkered and fighting for our lives. It's either you hope that there's any kind of safe haven, or you die.
Yeah.
It's
well,
really
that's why I like Train to Busan, is because
right.
That's literally the point of the movie, is you either die or you somehow make it long enough to reach the South Korean military and you're good.
And the thing about Last of Us, at least in part 1, is that they did this rather well. Now, the story goes, you are a man named Joel, and you have a daughter, and your daughter, you both live together, and you're on the verge of an outbreak. Something happened in the news. Oh, there's a virus that's gotten out of control. You end up leaving your house. Police come to arrest you because, people can't be out on the streets. They're zombies. Ugh. Your daughter accidentally gets killed, and you have to live with that. Fast forward a few more years, you're sort of on the run. You've been doing miscellaneous odd jobs here and there. Ooga Booga government taken over. Needless to say, you break away and you find a young woman named Ellie. Well, young woman. She's 15 in the. I think she's 15. Oh God, she's definitely 13, 15. But it turns out that she's immune.
Okay.
She's been bit, but she hasn't turned. Now, there is an organization, sort of a pseudo-government faction, more along the lines of vigilantes, called Fireflies. And Fireflies have bases stationed all over where you are. Now, the goal of the first game is to take Ellie to the Fireflies in order to create a vaccine, because they have the technology to do so, because they're situated in the hospital. You make it there, and it turns out that the vaccine can be made, but it would kill her. You go through the whole game with Ellie, and you start to kind of piece together a bit of a familial relationship. Obviously, Ellie doesn't have a dad, Joel doesn't have a daughter anymore, so it's kind of a subsidiary. And you grow to appreciate the characters, and lo and behold, Joel's like, fuck no, am I going to let her die? And proceeds to shoot up the entire hospital and help her escape. Yeah. Shoots the nurses, shoots the doctors, shoots anyone that stands in his way, and proceeds to then lie about Ellie, saying that, we couldn't do anything for you. That's where the game ends for part 1. Part 2 picks up exactly where the first one left off, pretty much. It's a few years later, but
is it like trying to fill in the gaps between like its future story? And...
I'll definitely get into that, and please hold that thought, because I need to compare it to something else that I think this game excels in very much, and really, I'll just get into it. A few years later, Ellie's getting older. She's starting to pick up the pieces, and they make it to, like the town, like the safe haven. There's no infected. It's a thriving community. You see this in The Walking Dead, but really, does it get? You've seen them all. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Now
and this, they all have the same fate. All of them.
Oh, they all have the same fate, where it's I'm comfortable where I want to be, and
one schmuck disagrees with me, and the next thing I know, the entire village that we're in is burnt to the ground.
You didn't even need to fucking play the game to pick up on it. Yeah. But basically what happens is that Joel, Ellie, all the characters from the first game come, except for a few, but those are like minor characters. And keep in mind, listeners, I'm giving you a very, very brief synopsis with spoilers, but it's going to come into play when I give my sort of rebuttal here. Ellie's starting to pick up the pieces of who she is, and why I got bit, but nothing happened to me. And it turns out you also take the perspective of a woman named Abby, who is a member of the quote unquote wolves. Who spawned from the disbanded Fireflies. They disbanded, and then they came together and they rebranded. They are looking for Joel because, the Fireflies did get their vaccine, so now they're hunting down Joel to find Ellie, basically. Joel kicks the bucket. He gets killed, and Ellie survives, and now she is going after Abby and the other team of wolves. You start to realize who she is as a person, especially as a 14-year-old, when she's doing things like exploring her sexuality and establishing herself as a predominant role in learning how to use a gun, let alone survive. Very different things, I would say, comparison to The Walking Dead, where you typically have sort of the male dominant fucking, let's fucking shoot some zombies and the women stay behind kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's every single episode. I'm just saying that I've seen it more.
It's a lot of the early stuff. That's for sure.
It's a lot of the early stuff, right? It's revealed very early on in The Last of Us 2 that Ellie is indeed a lesbian. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanna know the first red flag for the internet, there you go. Which I'm gonna go into why that's fucking bullshit. God, I can't wait to tear into this. Bottom line, this game, it's played in two perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You play as Ellie and you play as Abby. Abby is the second half of the game, whereas after Ellie's part is over, Abby confronts her saying, "Oh, you killed all my friends. What the fuck?" And then you basically remember how you said that. What did you say earlier? Like it's the retelling of a story, and like expanded upon.
Oh yeah. Where basically you have, you tell a story that is supposed to be told directly leading up after the previous story was told.
Right.
But there's this kind of jumping back and forth where you're basically getting the gaps filled in between what you're currently watching. So basically it's like, I guess the best way to describe it would be like if they had a Star Wars movie where they're back to back and they had a bunch of filler in between to kind of let you know, like, okay, this is what has changed between the first episode and the second episode. I guess if that makes any sense.
I would actually go so far as to say that this is more akin to Back to the Future 1 and 2. Okay, where 1 is being played in Ellie's perspective and 2 is being played in Abby's perspective. Because in Last of Us 2, you get brief glimpses of the first game, right?
Right.
And it's not really revealed as to why, Ellie is being hunted down alongside, making the vaccine, but that's kind of fallen below the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Abby is hunting Ellie, again, major spoiler, because when Joel was shooting up the hospital in order to save Ellie, Joel shot up the doctor about to perform the surgery on Ellie. Little do you know, in the first game, that doctor is Abby's father. Now, again, that's about as far as I played, that and some change. And really, when I went into The Last of Us 2, I went into it with the predisposition of me not going to enjoy it, because that's what the internet told me. That's what my friends told me, and that's what basically everyone told me in comparison to the first game, that it was a lackluster sequel comparatively. Now, personally, I don't know what the fuck constitutes a bad game other than it doesn't meet the fulfillment. But needless to say, I went into this with that exact attitude. And to this moment, to this current period, I have yet to find something that I'm disappointed in. I kept expecting to be disappointed, and it just didn't happen. Okay? Mainly because I like the story progression. I like how it subverts your expectations. The twist everyone was fucking bogging on, being like, oh, the twist was so fucking stupid. I'm like, I never would have given that doctor character a second thought had she not have been related to someone I'm now playing as. Okay? And that creates a great revenge motive. I can obviously sing its praises all day, and I could sing how, my opinion is my opinion, and you can take it for what it's worth, because in comparison to a lot of zombie outbreak media, this one definitely surpasses it. Is it a good Last of Us title? Not really in comparison to the first one, but I think, again, people need to look at it as sort of its standalone title. I'd like to turn our attention to Metro. News, but not as you know it. All right, well... So the article is titled "Why the Last of Us Part 2 is a Bad Sequel." It's a reader's feature. Garnered a substantial amount of comments. It's a little lackluster in the way how it sort of sings its praises and then denotes, sort of its shortcomings. And by no means is it a perfect game, nor is it a perfect piece of media.
Right.
But I'll just kind of go into it as to how kind of vapid it sounds. The The first Last of Us and its well-received DLC established a narrative that had two of the most beloved characters in gaming history, which was rightly lauded as a classic. It always felt like it should have remained as a standalone masterpiece, but a sequel is what we have. Let me start with the positives. The graphics are absolutely stunning. They're clearly pushing the aging PlayStation 4 to its limits, as a fan of the noise can testify to. As the fan noise can testify, yeah, that fucker is loud. The environmental level design is excellent, as is the sound. Facial animations are really superb. The presentation of this game is one of the best available on the PlayStation 4. So they're really singing its praises in the aestheticism department, where if you want to make the argument that, graphics make a game, you need to, first of all, see a colonoscopist and have them remove your head from your ass if you think that's all that matters.
I think that's proctology.
Proctology. I'm a fucking idiot, man. It's hot. Fucking hot. Ugh. Anyway. Another big positive are the game's accessibility options. Naughty Dog have really pushed the boat on this with clearly well thought out options. I'm colorblind to the point where some games pose a problem, so Naughty Dog's commitment to this area should be condemned. Personally, I thought it was annoying how it was fucking text-to-speech for every single option that you clicked. Although it has some tweaks, the gameplay is familiar, mostly performing as the same perfunctory way of processing the story. Enemy artificial intelligence at times is still laughably bad, because zombies are well known for having a prefrontal cortex.
Oh, of course.
However, the delicate balance of the original has gone. Environmental puzzles play little part now, so the gameplay is repetitive, sneak and kill, rinse and repeat. At times I began to feel like I was a data entry clerk. And then we come to the story. It's very difficult to criticize this game properly without spoilers. What I can say is it's far too long and structurally awkward. But it's in the second half that this game really falls apart. The second half is Abby's portion, like I said. There is a distasteful theme of underlying patronizing that makes the game feel like a 25-hour endeavor that only exists to tell players off. We are forced into performing certain actions we don't want to do, only then to be admonished for doing so. Often these are contrived parts which compromise the integrity of the characters simply to facilitate certain plot points to get a desired reaction. As such, they make decisions that are often fundamentally incoherent and illogical. The inconsistency of the treatment of certain characters performing the same actions during the second part is, at times, embarrassingly bad. The ending is a very good example of this. It's laugh-out-loud ridiculous in its lack of logic. The plot is clumsy, ham-fisted, and trite. Subtle, this game is not, and comes across as a series of cheap parlor tricks. In terms of beautifully drawn-out characters to help progress a plot, Druckmann is no Jane Austen. The terminal problem with this game for me was I just simply stopped caring. Okay, so the terminal problem, the be-all, end-all, is this fucking guy's opinion. Okay. Now, I'm not going to read on because it's a bunch of pedantic personal bullshit on his part. However, I will address the structurally awkward, contrived parts, facilitating certain plot points. I'm just going to come out and say it. Everyone fucking dogged this game because of the character's representation. Okay? Whether it be gender, sexuality, race, nationality. Like, everyone loved the fact that... I'm not going to say that Naughty Dog is inherently doing this to get a rise out of people. Because, really... if you think about it, these people played their parts in the best way that they could, and it wasn't fucking contrived. The fact that Ellie is an open lesbian whose partner that goes along with her, which, by the way, is of Jewish descent, so, fucking give a point to them for actually depicting something that isn't technically, isn't typically represented.
Right.
Because if you know anything about the Uncharted series with fucking faux hawk Mick Caucasian running around with a gun in certain countries, the only brown people that you see end up dead on the ground. Anyway, yeah. When it comes down to the representation of this game, it doesn't take away from the story. And I think a lot of people were going into the expectation that it would, thereby having something to complain about. Now, it's still stupid to complain about, right? Because on one hand, you you have liberals being like, well, this isn't adequately represented like it was in the first game. Well, in the first game, Ellie had a relationship with a girl at 14 that wasn't over-sexualized.
Well, it's no different than when you have characters that are in high school that, have relationships or crushes on each other. I mean, it's probably not like Degrassi,
but that was perfect in how it was at 14 years of age. Last of Us 2, Ellie's 19. Of course she's going to start exploring her sexuality, which she does pretty, I'm not going to say explicitly, but in some cutscenes it's pretty apparent that she isn't into dudes. Okay? Now, to the tune of Abby. To the people toting this sort of feminist regime that this game inexplicably took over from the first to the second game, toting these characters as the fucking Rosie the Riveter of first-person shooters. In all the hours I spent playing, and I'm still playing the game, not one moment did I see some contrived feminazi bullshit where it was shoved down my throat to such an extent that I was thereby annoyed. Okay? These characters naturally are going to look different and going to act different based on their background. Okay? Ellie was a young girl when she was found, and let's be serious, she's kind of the same person growing up. Okay? Abby put on some muscle. But that's because she was raised in an institution similar to the military, the Fireflies, okay? So when you look at Abby when she was younger versus Abby when she's older, and you see both sides, yeah, she's grown a considerable amount of muscle, okay? But that doesn't mean that she can't do the job, right? And what I don't really know. I maybe you can put it into better words than I can, but what does this exactly take away from the story? Nothing. Okay? Like I said, it's just a bunch of pedantic bullshit. It was still a pretty brainless, mindless, fun action game, for what it was worth. I wasn't expecting anything out of a what's a good novelist? What's a good novelist that focused in the supernatural? Clyde Barker. There we go.
Sure. I was gonna say Lovecraft.
Yeah.
That seems like the.
Yeah, it wasn't anything out of a Clyde Barker novel, definitely. But it was fun. This one is definitely more along the lines of a AAA title. Obviously, they're centered on story, and if you look at it as that, then that's what you get, and a pretty good one. Okay? Because I'm sorry, going into The Last of Us 2, I looked at it as a political statement. And I realized that was the completely wrong way to do things. Okay? Right. So rather than looking at it as solely a political statement to get mad at the expectations that I had previously, why don't you look at it as a game? And if anything else, it's a 30-hour time waste in this goddamn unknown amount of time spent pandemic. All right? So, okay, you just burned 30 hours. You write it off as a $30 loss. You're still stuck inside, dude.
Right.
Fuck's sake. I mean...
Hell, that's how I feel about GTA Vice City. I mean...
Oh, well, that game was a masterpiece. No, it wasn't. Comparison to San Andreas, it really wasn't.
San Andreas is like the gold standard.
The fucking pinnacle, yeah.
Obviously, if I had 5 available for iOS, this would be a very different discussion. But given what I have access to, because I have an iPhone... San Andreas is, oh yeah.
Oh, very.
Well,
yeah.
I get the feeling with, and I haven't read too many of the reviews for The Last of Us 2. For a while, I heard good things. Like the anticipation for it was enough that I was like, I don't know how this game could fail.
That's the thing. You could say the same thing about Fallout 76, and my God, do I still have a fucking aneurysm every time I think about that game, because that game is the reason why I no longer anticipate launch titles anymore. It was that bad.
Oof.
It was that bad. And I didn't even buy this game. I did not buy Last of Us 2. I instead borrowed it from a coworker of mine who was very generous in lending it to me because he had, sort of the same contrarian opinion that I'm having, where it was pretty good and don't let the online reviewers kind of fool you into it.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I was only spoiled one time, and that was because Joel was dying, or Joel died, which, let's be serious, to progress the story, it kind of needed to happen for that revenge plot to be there in the first place on both sides. Okay. So if you want to look at this as a revenge plot, which people think is done to death in comparison to the first one, my question is this. Either take the revenge plot for what it is, or what the fuck else do you have in a zombie outbreak story other than just to survive? Okay? Really? Because rather than finding a cure, you are the cure.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you cannot die. And that puts you in a very, very story-driven perspective that I think is why Last of Us was a fucking blockbuster, And I'm not saying that this game has to reach blockbuster standards because, let's be serious. The game could use a tweak or 50, but it's not what critics say it is. It's not what Metro Mongoloid or Forbes fuckhead, says it is. And I want to go into sort of the second article here to sort of cap it off. Now, The Last of Us Part 2, what's the problem here exactly? Well, like many people, I spent most of yesterday diving into The Last of Us 2, a sequel to one of my favorite games of all time and an experience I've been waiting years for. But between plot leaks, ripped cutscenes, and controversy about certain characters, I knew a war was brewing, and one has indeed arrived. While The Last of Us 2 has a best games of the generation level critic score of 95 on Metacritic. 95, and people are still ragging on it. So the user score is obviously bombed, where it sits at a 3.4 out of 10 with 24,000 reviews.
Wow.
For context, the entire lifespan of The Last of Us 1 generated just over 9,000 user scores. It's been 36 hours for The Last of Us Part 2. 36 hours when this was written. 24,000 reviews. So what the hell is going on? Why are so many people mad about the game? After playing it around 12 hours or so, I can only comment on what appears to be about the first half if the 25 to 30 hour reports of total playtime are true, and yet I remain confused, and simultaneously not very confused at all. As a fan of the original, I am very much liking this one as well. Everything I loved about the first game is present here. Yeah, pretty much. All the mechanics are the same. These are some of the most beautiful, most detailed environments I've ever seen in a video game. The performance, capture, and writing is excellent, and the story swings between brutal lows and genuinely sweet highs. Okay, you want to stroke the aestheticism dick even more? There you go. If there's anything to complain about, many of the issues I have with the first game are still present here. I think the clickers/infected are a poorly realized enemy type, and I can't stand any of those encounters. Let me put it to you this way, Mancini. A zombie that is a zombie's let's just say method of locating your whereabouts are not running at you. Instead, it's determinant on echolocation. If you make a sound, they know where you are. Doesn't that seem pretty cool?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is what a clicker is, quote unquote.
Okay.
Personally, he thinks it's a poorly realized enemy type, not knowing that you're supposed to, I don't know, fucking crouch and sneak up on it. I don't know. I think the story gets broken up by overly long exploration and combat sequences, especially when Ellie is alone and there are not interspersed cutscenes to keep things moving. Well, it's kind of what the gameplay is for there, Slick. And yet the issues with the game are nowhere near enough to offset the goods so far, so something else is clearly at play here with everyone screaming about how much it sucks and they hate it. So what's up? I have to go into early spoilers here a bit because it's more or less impossible to talk about the game without mentioning what is effectively the entire driving force behind the plot. Number 1, the death of Joel. One impetus for anger in these early reviews is a plot point that I'm willing to say that many players have probably reached. I am less convinced these many thousands of people have all reached the end in the first game, so if they experienced the ending, it was just through a leaked cutscene. I am, of course, talking about Joel's brutal murder at the hands of Abby. and her former Firefly contingent, where he's captured and beaten to death right in front of Ellie. It is, of course, a shocking moment. It is also not terribly surprising, if you ask me. Yes, I've heard the leaks, but well before that ever happened, the first trailer showcased that Ellie was on the warpath out to get revenge. From that first moment, it seemed pretty clear to me that it was likely that some group had killed Joel, and even if Joel did appear in some spots, I figured those were either flashbacks or imagined appearances. I was half right, at least. I simply disagree with the notion that killing a character you like is automatically a bad story decision. Okay, so maybe I judged this article a little bit too harshly at first, because it isn't a bad story decision. Sure, sometimes stories can go too far with the idea. The absurd body counts in Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, etc. There you fucking go. There you go. And yet here I think it absolutely works as a driving force. Okay, so it goes on. The agenda is number 2. Let me give you a helpful hint. If your negative review of The Last of Us 2 is based anywhere from 0 to 30 hours of playtime, includes the words agenda, feminism, SJW, woke, pandering, or political correctness, you have already lost this argument. The common refrain I'm already hearing from people is saying, it's not about that, it's about the story. Okay, I feel like this dude is speaking to me subconsciously.
Well, I think it's, I don't know, like kind of looking from the outside in on the subjects of,
like, what would you say if a gay relationship or anything that isn't sort of the heteronormative stereotype is portrayed in a situation where it's really not important, okay? And while, yes, it is important to have this representation in any form of media, zombies are fucking killing you, okay? I think the last thing I'm worried about is whether or not the main protagonist is shacking up with a guy or a girl, okay? Because bottom line, it's written well. And it's executed not in the way that, say, Family Guy would do it, where it's overtly stereotypically gay or overtly stereotypically racist. So what is detracting from the story exactly?
I honestly, the idea that anybody would think that it's somehow a detractor, I mean, you almost need to sometimes ask these people, are you okay with characters of color in general? Like that, you almost want to boil it down to that point, because that's where you finally get an answer as to what these people are thinking about. Because I guarantee you, these are probably the same people that had a conniption fit over John Boyega playing Finn in Star Wars, where there were comments saying, you can't have a black stormtrooper. Why? There's no Star Wars explanation for that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that you have some of these people that will twist the canon. They will lie to basically justify, oh, well, he can't be a stormtrooper because they used clones of Jango Fett. That is false. They did not.
Okay, well, devil's advocate. If they used clones of Jango Fett was not a fucking white man. Okay?
Right.
So,
and also those clones were supposed to rapidly age.
Right.
Which means by the time the Clone Wars were over, they needed to retire. That was why they got into the civilian stormtrooper program, and the First Order adapted it, and that's how you got Finn as a stormtrooper. The fact that people had an issue with that, I mean, for goodness sake, Lando was like the first black Star Wars character, and he betrayed the rebels. He betrayed his own friends.
Right.
And you don't have anybody saying anything about that or looking for some kind of hidden meaning when someone could easily make up a conspiracy theory around that.
Well, bottom line, if you want to criticize anything for John Boyega, it's not his portrayal. It's not the fact that he's black, okay? Fucking rake him through the mud because he learned how to pick up a lightsaber. Inexplicably. Okay, whereas it took Luke 2 films to do it, and the third one to do it even remotely well. It's like...
So it's like this idea...
It's like... complain about that. Okay, complain about the non-pedantic things in a film that it doesn't even contribute to the main plot. It doesn't even contribute to the main EU, the extended universe.
Right. Well, and I think with The Last of Us, the idea that there's some kind of agenda or people that actually think, they're trying to shove it down our throats. It's like, no, it's the fact that you've never had a story that's addressed characters who are LGBTQ. In a zombie apocalypse, there are going to be victims who are, victims, but also survivors that are LGBTQ. Because guess what? If we're trying to make this the same as our normal reality, then you're going to encounter characters that are gay or bisexual or transgender. It's just the way it is. I mean, no one ever complained about people of color in The Walking Dead. That's because it's supposed to reflect our society. We have a diverse society. If people
Right.
don't like that, sorry, incels, guess what? It's a lot bigger than, the white walls of your home and the white parents of your family. It's so much bigger. And this is something even Walking Dead tapped into in kind of an interesting way. The problem was the main story was pointless. The main story was such a moot point that any auxiliary story about its characters, they didn't matter in regards to the overall story because the overall story was garbage. And ultimately, the only fate you knew these characters had ahead of them was probably getting eaten,
Right.
or
Right.
turning in some way.
Right. So I was having the same conversation about to Heather actually about Hamilton, because really when you look at the cast of Hamilton, you get white people few and far between. Okay,
Right.
when it comes to assuming roles. Now, I would make the argument. Well, I would make the obvious argument that Miranda made it that way, obviously, to blend the old and the new. But maybe I'm a bit politically incorrect when I say this, but the people that were chosen for the roles are fucking good performers, regardless of their skin color.
Yeah.
Now I was admittedly kind of ostracized when I made that comment because I guess Heather thought that it was along the lines of, they didn't just get the role because they were black or brown. I'm like, no, of course not. It's because that they were the best suited for the role, according to Miranda's opinion. But also because, when you're looking at these portrayals, especially if you grew up in the 21st century with a hint of education, you can kind of see past the fact that George Washington is being portrayed as a black male, or that Hamilton is being portrayed as a person of color, or 80% of the entire cast of Hamilton is being portrayed by people of color. Okay, because that didn't take away from the story, which if you want to, from the first song to the last, I'm hooked. I don't give a fuck what they look like. Okay, I guess from an audience standpoint, I give a fuck if they sing well, which of course they do.
They do.
And in regards to The Last of Us 2, does the game put me in a position where you feel like the hero? Obviously not, because it's not a silent protagonist, okay? Or a sort of like a what's the word? Not a silent protagonist, but like first person,
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, you're being told the story through another player's perspective, in this case, two.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm a white man sitting here playing a game that is about two white women, I'm sure my southern and midwestern brethren would disagree with me, but I didn't see anything wrong with that. Okay?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
It didn't take away from my predisposition of the world, blah, as a white man. But it was like, okay, if you were legitimately in a circumstance where you were fighting for your own life, would the first thing that be on my mind is who I'm boinking after the adventure is over? Like, I don't realistically think so.
Well, I think if you ask your average gamer, that probably is what they're thinking, unfortunately.
Hey, gamers don't need sex, okay? Statistically, their penises are bigger, okay? Stop! Anyway. No, I really do.
Suddenly, millions of Fortnite voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
Oh, no, the Zoomer boys!
Well, and I think too that, this is the new, and it's been this way for years now, where it's been about, okay, who are these games for? Who are we going to bring in? How are we going to expand our audience? Now, the thing with that is, if you have a game that has enough of a reach with not only its characters but just the property alone, then you can probably rake in a lot of fans from all walks of life that are going to be interested, and they're going to want to play the game for full effect. But when it comes to the hardcore gamers that have been, they've got carpal tunnel dating all the way back to Halo 3, and they've been, they've seen it all from the rise and fall of Destiny to, online GTA gaming. And yet you keep running back into these same issues every now and then, where a game or a movie comes out, and now look, you're definitely going to have, in some media, you will have something that's basically shoved down your throat. Case in point, Captain Marvel. I'm not going to go into it because I don't really care about Captain Marvel or Marvel movies in general, but that's a good example of having something clearly shoved down your throat. In regards to just about everything else, case in point, and I know I'm not a fan of these movies anymore, but they're a good example. The Star Wars sequel trilogy. They did this because, again, in a galaxy far, far away, you would think it has some degree of diversity, given that you have so many thousands of star systems, as well as so many different kinds of aliens. You would also think that maybe the human species is diverse in of itself. And they proved that in this new trilogy, and that's great. All the power to you. You ultimately made a very horribly written trilogy that kind of ruins the ending of one of my, childhood moments of getting to sit there and, slow clap with Lando as they're on Endor because they just blew up the frickin' Death Star. But you applied something that is so welcoming and universally accepted, or at least it ought to be in this twisted, stupid country, and you put it in a galaxy far, far away, where the emphasis on not only having a united team of, ragtag rebels and aliens and pirates and droids, but you're acquiring all of that in a way to show we can stand up against that which is putting us down. And to that effect, it did it effectively. But the backlash, and this is something that I've said ever since I think ever since our last in-person episode, we talked about this, and especially specifically in regards to Last Jedi, it's the divisiveness of having characters that aren't your stereotypical lead characters, i.e., having an Asian supporting female character in Rose Tico, and the idea that people had a problem with that is disgusting. I mean, it's why how is this a problem in Star Wars of all places? It's she's part of the resistance. She's part of the good guys. She's a part of the reason why this story is supposed to be for everyone. That was, if you wanted a takeaway from that movie, it's that this is for everyone. And so for The Last of Us 2 to have all these detractors because of two female characters that, aren't your stereotypical female characters, it's like, well, what, do you want the same, boring story about the Great White Hope saving everybody and, maybe he gets bit at the end, maybe he doesn't? Like, you got to change it up,
Yeah. And see, that was sort of the idea that they went with in regards to The Last of Us Part 1, which had a DLC implemented in it. And this is where the sort of the growing up and realizing yourself of Ellie, that's where it really begins to take form. Because in this 2-hour mini side story, you go with another Firefly member, and I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head, but she is a young girl, Ellie's age, and you can tell that this is, a crush that is happening. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's nowhere along the lines of the 19-year-old that you're now seeing in this game. But maybe people are comparing it to the first game and this specific DLC because it was done a lot more subtly. And I think that is what people who are left-leaning and liberals would very much prefer, in contrast to the comedic, hyperbolistic representation in like Family Guy, the Yahoo, those
Right.
kind of games.
Yeah.
It was done beautifully in that game, and I would venture to say that it was done very well in this one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
To spoil the DLC, and what makes it even more powerful is that girl doesn't even end up living in the end. Matter of fact, you don't know what happens to her. All you know is at the end of the DLC, she gets bitten, and and Ellie stays with her, and the credits roll. So what's going to happen, but it's like, fuck, I can go on and on. I really can. And I very much like to sort of wrap up this article as well as like any closing thoughts I have.
Mm-hmm.
I left off on the common refrain I'm already hearing is people saying it's not about that, it's about the story. And there are hundreds of user reviews that all cite one or all of those terms, saying that Naughty Dog is pushing some sort of agenda because these characters exist in the game. 12 hours in, and that's literally all that happens. Ellie is gay. She has a girlfriend who is her traveling companion. In the first half of the game, the only commentary at all about any of this, other than the mere existence of these characters, is Ellie calling a guy a bigot who made a big deal out of her kissing Dina. Dina is Ellie's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
The guy apologizes. He makes them sandwiches. The end. That's it. It's ridiculous to me that these characters simply existing somehow defines an agenda. If a guy and a girl get together in a cutscene, it's par for the course in any game or movie or show. And yes, there is an uncensored sex scene in the game. Have fun looking for it. If a girl and a girl do it, it's being shoved in our faces. It really wasn't. Maybe it's the frat boy rising in me, but I didn't see shit, man. I was expecting a porno. I'm kidding. I wasn't expecting a porno. That's the thing. If that's what it would have took, then I probably would have said, this is how gay people have sex. Cool. Did it add to the story any? Not really. But I now know that they're in a relationship, which is kind of all I needed to know.
Right.
It didn't detract and it didn't add anything. It was just a subsidiary.
Well, it's almost like you want to ask these people, okay, so it's either being shoved down your throat as part of an agenda, but then what's your alternative? Is the alternative to just have it be, another cis man, cis woman, or are you going to fetishize it? And at least with one of those, you're with one of those, you're committing a sin. With the other one, you're basically just giving me a milquetoast story, because it could be no different from watching Rick and Lori walking in the forest with Coral, and John Bernthal and the rest of the gang. Like it's like any other zombie story that has, or hell, you don't even need to use zombies. You could use the example of A Quiet Place. Like it's a white guy, his white wife, and their white kids. Oh, I can relate to that. I've seen enough stories with a husband and a wife and their kids. Like, I want to see something different, but I also want to see something that's maybe a little bit more representative. And on top of that, again, it has to do with the story. And I think, based on everything that you've said, it sounds like the story works with the two female characters, and that if you took them out, it would be a very different story.
Well, if you took them out and replaced it, let's just say Joel's alive. So you're playing as a standalone, heteronormative white male. Okay. Yeah. I like revenge stories. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't care who's in the driver's seat when I play these kinds of games. Mm-hmm. I especially love it when it's non-Euclidean, as this one is.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have had a problem regardless. And me going into it with the prestigious gamer journalism badge bestowed upon my fucking chest. I'm sorry, I really hate to dock your profession, man, but there's a reason why I'm not a journalist, and it's because I don't carry my opinions like a fucking bag on my hip. Because if I would have analyzed every single piece of media like the people online and people directly to my face told me to do, I would have probably this would have probably been a much different episode with me saying, this ruins the game, that ruins the game. But in a way, turning off my brain, or tuning my brain, I should say, in order to not maintain ignorance, but to appreciate the actual work and time and effort this story got.
Yeah.
It's the first one. It became a much more pleasant experience. It's kind of a weird thing to juxtapose it with, but I'm at work and I'm thinking about this episode today and earlier on today, and I kept thinking about this game, my opinion on it, and Joker. More specifically, a quote by our favorite political pundit, Paul Joseph Watson. No. But no. It's mainly his interpretation of the media's reaction to Joker, which admittedly I wholeheartedly agree with, because he says that, certain people, certain journalists, and I'm paraphrasing here, went into watching the movies with their thumbs up their asses and their minds already made up.
That's true.
And I think a lot of people went into The Last of Us 2 expecting it to be like the first one, or expecting it to thoroughly disappoint it. It could have been avoided. It could have been avoided if people just appreciated it for what it was, which was a different take on the Outbreak franchise.
Yeah.
Okay, because I can't do another Walking Dead or fucking Contagion or Cloverfield or A Quiet Place. I can't do the God, what's the word when people are the sentient monster trope again, where let's run, gun, and hide to some extent, and hope. No, tell a fucking revenge story, please. Anything to break up the monotony of this.
Well, that's why I'm so curious about Peninsula, the Train to Busan sequel, because the movie, the first movie, number one, if you haven't seen it, oh my goodness, you have to see it. I couldn't believe it very recently when I was going through a terrible bout of depression from the stuff that I was reading, the books I was reading. I rewatched Train to Busan, and I rewatched it, and I was thoroughly intrigued and just as happy to watch it as I was the first time around, because it is such a different take when you have a setting like South Korea and you have characters like you have in that movie, where they're from all walks of life, and yet they're all realizing they have to either cooperate or basically put other lives at risk in order to survive. And, based on what I can understand, even just from the title of the sequel, if it is on a peninsula, then, that there's going to be potentially a chase on a beach. Maybe. I don't know. But it's exciting enough because, okay, this first movie was about zombies on a train and going from place to place and realizing either you're completely screwed or, oh, the train station's been completely destroyed or everyone's been zombified at the train station. We got to keep going. We can't get off this train. And, again, having the characters be so different, where you've got the macho guy with his pregnant wife, the businessman father who's very neglectful with his daughter. He's divorced from his wife. And then you got like this baseball team that gets involved, and they got the one cheerleader who's got a crush on the one guy who's not really reciprocal in their sort of relationship tete-a-tete. And then you got like the corrupt businessmen that are like hiding and doing their best to make sure that everybody else gets eaten before they do. There's and that's just skimming it on the surface. There's so much to the movie, To Train to Busan, that makes it probably one of the best zombie movies of the last, oh my goodness, I don't know how many. I mean, at least the best since Shaun of the Dead, at least. But it's telling a different story, and obviously it has the benefit of also being a foreign film. So the budget's going to be different, the cast is going to be very different, the story's going to be very raw and very emotionally driven in a way that I don't know if American films are, ever as good as anymore in that regard. That's almost what you have to introduce to people that are detracting from The Last of Us 2 is, well, what zombie story do you want? And when you start getting the responses of basically, a guy surviving on the run, it's like, well, okay, and it's a white dude. Oh, gee, all right, like I haven't seen this before. Okay, like it just starts to get nauseating, and it just starts to feel boring. I mean, and I think adding that soap opera element like Walking Dead did, it's how you're going to lose your viewership. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where something like Fear the Walking Dead, I would argue, and I hate saying this because I haven't seen it, thus I can't say whether or not this is true, but at least every time I've seen the advertising for it, it's given me hope that this feels like a different show because of where it's located. Because I want to say the first few seasons are like near LA and Mexico, which is obviously for us, that's like, ooh, give me more. That's right. That's our bread and butter, whereas the woods of Georgia, it's like, oh,
yeah. So this is set, location-wise, it is very metropolitan, right? So you have like abandoned buildings, abandoned hospitals, but this one you actually go to. So this is off the coast of, I think it's Seattle. And there's like an island there or something, and it's like all foresty. I don't even know if this is geographically correct.
It's the same people that are ruffled by the expression Black Lives Matter. I mean, that's the easiest way I can summarize it, because again, it just seems to me like if people are that upset over, what is it, 2 lesbian characters in a zombie video game, I mean, video games are not what they used to be. It's not the simple days of Halo and Super Mario and the most badass Grand Theft Auto character was CJ. Like it's a very different world. Keanu Reeves is a video game character. Paul McCartney is writing holographic music videos for spacefaring soldiers, I guess. I don't know. I don't know enough about Destiny, but like it's a different world now. And obviously with COVID as well, it's like, look, there's a reason why you get all that horrible pedantic shit that says, we're in this together apart. It's like, I get that, and it's still stressing on the fact that, we still need to be united in some way. And the idea that people are going to, crap a brick because, there's a lesbian character in my video game. It's like, oh my God, like, get real. Get a life.
Literally.
Help OG Loke steal the lyrics book. There you go.
Fuck off, man. Oh my God. All you had to do was follow the damn train,
CJ.
God.
I've beaten that easy, by the way. The idea that anyone has found that level hard.
It's a fucking nightmare.
Oh,
dude,
it's so easy.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay, so you tell me, Rockstar Dev, how do you fucking shoot a machine gun upwards when A, you're not even in control of the fucking machine gun or where it goes, and B, when the hitboxes are so goddamn tiny because you have to literally be a penis length on the track in order to aim at.
Well, it's
it's like
there's ways of being sneaky about it. I know there's at least one sneaky way.
Man, I cheated and I fucking did the jetpack thing. Okay. and I shot him myself. All right, mission passed. That's it. You want to know the real hard mission was flying around that biplane. Oh my god.
Oh.
Mother of a fuck. And
Oh.
I played it on PC too, so
Oof.
it's all fucked up.
Oof.
Um,
Oof.
oh god. But anyway, I guess in closing, when it comes
Mm.
down to The Last of Us 2, it's like quit being such hard asses. All right? Do what you need to do. Rob, cheat, lie, steal, join Obama's cabinet, fucking play the game, okay? And form your own opinion. I don't know, maybe not let it slide into the hands of people telling you how to think. I don't know. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but
Oh, I'll put it this way: if they think they're being force fed something, then they need to realize that that's an argument that has long since lost any legs. It's kind of like if people are gonna once the term agenda pops into the discourse, then you know that you're not dealing with a sane argument. You're dealing with somebody that is just frazzled because they
yeah,
had to see,
because
a
it's
person of
not
color, or they
it's
had to, you
exactly.
know,
It's not Naughty Dog's agenda, it's your own self-proclaimed agenda that
I
you've
mean,
so intricately betwixt onto this fucking video game. And it's a video game, dude. I mean, video games are art. Fuck whatever Roger Ebert thinks, okay? But seriously, it's like if you want to make the argument that anything and everything is a political representation, go for it, man. But my God, I implore you to play the game for what it is in comparison to what other mediums have tried to do and have
mhm.
either succeeded or failed in doing. Okay? Is The Last of Us 2 a good game? It's a fucking great game if you look past what people are dog shitting it about. Is it
Mhm.
a good Last of Us game? I still think that the first one holds a bit of a higher candle, but there's no reason why you shouldn't play both, especially when everyone has all the time in the world now.
Yeah.
So, well, where can the good people find you?
So when it comes to Twitter, as I slowly watch the website immolate in front of my eyes, you can find me at ManciniRA, watching just about everything from why nobody likes Trump to Trump saying nobody likes me. It's pretty sad that this is what we've come to now as a country is, 150,000 people dead, and the president of the United States is complaining that nobody likes him. It just shows where all of our priorities are. As for Instagram, you can find me at Mancini Ryan. There, I'm continuing to share whatever news that I can, whether it be local or anything involving the upcoming election. I believe as of recording, we are about, I think, 99 days from Election Day. So I know there's going to be a big push beginning on August 3rd to get people to not only register to vote, but make sure that they know at least 9 people that they can get to register to vote. It's part of a hashtag that is escaping me, and we'll probably talk about it next time. But yeah, go register to vote, you goofs. And Sebastian, where can the good people check out your I don't know what would be the best word. Your vanity, shall we say?
Oh, going there. Okay. Jesus Christ. No, it really is like it's fucking vanity project after vanity project. And I'll tell you what though, I'm having a fun time with it. Um,
That's good.
yeah, no, I'm having a fun time with it, and I'll go into it in my closing statement here. But you can find me as well on social media through Twitter and Instagram. I've said this before a million times. I'll say it again. I Twitter's done to death. Um, it's dead to me in so many ways that I can even describe. And every single time I go on it, I feel like I have congestive heart failure. It's oh my God. You can find me there at Dr_Sebi, same as Instagram at Dr. Sebi. You can also find me on YouTube under the handle of Seabass, yes, like the fish. There you will have a complete collection of daily uploaded narrations. You can also follow me on my audio archive, Shugsy Storytime, a podcast on Anchor that is anything but. Now, into the good stuff. I recently had some good news today. So to offset Google demoting me from publisher to just standalone plebeian author on the search result, I have finally been musically verified.
Hey.
If you guys don't know, I've been posting a few tracks here and there, mainly just experimental EPs and things like that. And I never really thought that it could go anywhere, but today I was just looking up the status of an album that I actually published today. I noticed that I had a little box on Google where you could find all my stuff. So check it out. You can find that under the handle of Shugsy. That's SCHUGZY. I'm available on all streaming platforms. Today I just released an album called On the House. Check it out. Feel free to shoot me a manuscript at Sebastian Shug Publishing, either via email and or phone. Stay tuned for more episodes, as well as other episodes on other individual podcasts. And form your own opinions. Play Last of Us 2. Go outside. I don't know.
It's a good idea. I mean, it's still summer, you know. Either that or people just need to do what I'm doing. They need to just get themselves a new chair. I don't know, maybe all the gamers that had a problem with Last of Us 2 need to get a new chair.
I need to get something.
Well, I know what they can't get. They can't get no satisfaction.
Oh! How's it going? Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you for listening to Mars on Life. You can find us over on Instagram and on Twitter at Mars on Life Show. In terms of listening to the show, you can find us wherever podcasts are found. That includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and Radio Public. Our artwork is done by Zachary Erberich, and our intro music is Space Explorers by Kevin MacLeod. I've been Ryan Mancini. My co-host, as always, is Sebastian Shug. And just remember, if you keep on going, you'll make it to Mars.